Hello, everybody. We are live now. My name is Hetal Doshi. I am an organizational psychologist, and I was told that I need to do a better job serving the community. So one of the things that I'm trying to do for our community in Malaysia right now is to reach out to experts and everyday heroes, just like you and I, so that we can bring relevant content to support our mental well-being and to set ourselves at a higher state than the normal so that we can thrive during these challenging times. Together with me is a very, very famous and very loved psychiatrist. We don't normally have those two words coming together, like I love my psychiatrist, but I know everybody that I know loves Dr. Prem and has had a wonderful experience with him. So I have together with me neuropsychiatrist Dr. Prem Kumar. And although he's based in Penang, thank God for the internet, we have full access to him as though he's right in front of us. We're going to talk a little bit about mental health approaches that can build resistance and treatments, but also we will focus a little bit on the impact of quarantine and post-quarantine. So, Dr. Prem, before we move forward, maybe an introduction about who you are, in case anyone might not know.
Okay, thank you, Hetal. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Hetal, for the kind words. It's news to me. I'm Prem. I work as a psychiatrist in Penang Adventist Hospital, and in my spare time, I teach at the RUMC Penang, formerly known as Penang Medical College.
And you have been in practice for the past 25 years, I understand.
I've been in psychiatry for 25 years, including my training.
Right. And you said that the past couple of days you've been doing a lot of reading yourself because these are really quite unique times. What have you found out about the impact of the quarantine on us?
Okay. Suddenly, of late, a lot of people have been doing retrospective studies, taking advantage of this whole crisis and hoping to get some new information out and possibly help others. And one of the things they managed to delineate is the impact of quarantine. And it's broken up basically into three components. One is the autonomy. Okay, the autonomy is basically when you are suddenly faced with things that are not changing. You're at home, there is nothing much happening, especially if you are not working, and that can be a stress factor. The second thing is your own competency. By that I mean your resilience, the type of personality you are. What type of person were you? Are you one who would strive to overcome any obstacles that are put in your way, right? And the third is connectedness, connecting with each other, all right, by phone, by internet, and this definitely has been found to reduce isolation.
That's really interesting. Could you share some examples? So you've spoken about autonomy, competency, and connectedness.
Yeah.
Could you give us some examples of autonomy?
Basically, autonomy is, okay, you are ordered to stay home. You have to remember, as compared to previous viral outbreaks, say the SARS, Ebola outbreak. Now, during SARS, it wasn't a mandatory quarantine all the time. There were people who were told to voluntarily quarantine themselves. And studies have also found that even voluntary quarantine had caused problems because this is something new to people. And especially for us in Malaysia, I mean, we've never really been quarantined, or other people from my generation and below. So it is something new. So you need to break that autonomy at home. You need to find things to do. You have to get creative. You have to combat boredom. So that was apparently one of the three um, very
Right.
important factors.
Can I clarify? So, is this your level of independence that you can have in situations like this? Is that what autonomy means?
No, it's basically being able to do something. This is not. This is not. It is what the reason they broke it up was because they wanted separate subheadings. This is not a quality. It is
Oh,
not a
okay.
quality as competency, which is the second one.
Okay.
Competency would be basically your ability to think logically, use your wisdom, that sort of thing. It depends on your makeup, your
Right.
personality makeup.
Okay.
So,
All right.
like I mentioned the other day, a lot of people have done a lot of things that they would never have had the time nor the creativity to embark on previously. Um, I think I mentioned sharing recipes online, you know, um, writing blogs to help people, letting people know what they have done, in the hope that maybe other people would get ideas as to how to pass their time. Basically constructive things, take up a new skill, learn something new.
Right. Right. And yeah, so I guess autonomy, a level of competency, your personality type, as well as your level of connectedness.
Connectedness. I think that's really important. You need to keep in touch to a certain degree as to how you used to keep in touch with people on a physical level. So you would basically, if you go to work and you work in a big office, now staying at home, especially if you're single, that's going to really hit you because you've got to, you can't go and get your own meals. I mean, you can, but it's discouraged. Try to cook at home. You're all alone. You don't have anyone to talk to, so you've got to maintain that social interactions.
Okay. And these are pre-existing, or so these are, like, I guess your competency and personality are more
Yeah, your,
internal dispositions of sorts,
your
and
character
also
traits.
learnable skills, and then also level of connectedness with other people. Now, how do you? Okay, so regardless of what is going on, how do I know if I am experiencing mental health related issues? So we're going to talk about that as well. How do you identify mental health related issues during the MCO?
Now, what we have to remember is feeling stressed, not really knowing what is happening. It happens to just about everyone because we've never really been put in this situation before. But there are certain things that can alert a doctor or even members of the public, as to a person's level of risk where developing some trauma related or mental issues is concerned. Now, that would be excessive fear or excessive worrying about their health. Now, we know that this virus is not going to come look for you in your house. You have got to be out in contact with people. So, that has to be put straight. It has to be put right. People must be educated on how transmission occurs. Next, if their sleep and appetite changes, I think I mentioned it the last time also, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have difficulty sleeping or you sleep and then you wake up earlier than your usual time and you can't go back to sleep, or if you've lost your appetite and you've started to lose weight because of that, these are reasonably worrying signs that you may be
Yes.
headed for something something.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
and if the third would be, if you've already had some pre-existing physical issues, health issues, right? And if they
Mm,
start getting worse, because we do know that high levels of stress can affect your diabetic control, right?
mm,
So if your
mm,
physical illnesses start to get a little bit unstable,
mm,
that would be one thing. And the last is if there's an increase in substance use, if you find that you are relying more on alcohol or recreational drugs to fall asleep
mm,
or to stay calm. Now,
mm.
these are the four things that would alert um, someone that they know may be actually heading for trouble.
Right. And we also spoke about, I mean, it's okay if it happens for like 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row, but what's not okay is that if it continues for about 2 weeks and in a similar
Yeah,
level of intensity, which should be in a high range. So you're talking about
most of
excess.
the day,
Sorry?
most of the day, every day for 2 weeks.
Hmm. Right. Oh, that sounds horrible.
I know, but then
Yeah.
again, we've been in this quarantine for a month now, a bit more. I mean, 5 weeks, and
Mm,
you would expect symptoms to show up, but I think a
mm,
lot of people are still scared to leave home, and
mm.
maybe they are not. They don't know the proper channels as to how to seek help. So that is why,
Right.
when you approached me to do this, I said I think this will be a good platform to let people know that you can even do it over the net for the time being until you're more confident to go out, which we are going to talk about later.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So in summary, I guess um, some very crucial things to look out for is excessive fear or worry about health, or maybe even anything. I guess potentially.
Yeah, worrying about having a very negative perception of how we are going to come out of this. And if
Mm,
you are constantly repeating yourself to others and worrying other people in the
mm,
process, that is unhealthy.
mm. Right. Constantly repeating yourself as well. Okay. Note to self. I had to do that a few times because I have bad memory. Sleep and appetite changes as well. I was actually thinking about this the other day after our interview. I was like, that is definitely the first thing that is very noticeable difference from the baseline that we tend to have. So
Yeah.
major changes in sleep and appetite, and increase in physical symptoms or currently existing ailments, and
Yep.
increase in substance usage as well. So excessive drinking, more coffee than normal. I guess substance usage or any form of addiction. Would you say?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't call it addiction yet. Sometimes the term we tend to use is self-medication.
Hmm.
We, when you take something to help calm your nerves or to help you sleep, we call it self-medication.
Ah, in our world, we just call it a fix. Side note, what is your fix? We'll go to that a bit later. But would you also say, self-medication would be in the form of excessive usage of the phone, or excessive coffee, or excessive anything to keep yourself a bit balanced, or is this specific to substance usage?
It'll be more, it'll be more towards substances. If you're
Okay.
looking at a tendency to watch more porn or maybe drink more coffee, that we're talking about something else.
Okay, all right. And how do we, so yeah, okay, so we've spoken about how to identify some of these mental health related issues. For those of you who are tuning in right now, I am together with Dr. Prem, who's a neuropsychiatrist, and we're discussing mental health approaches that builds resistance and treatments. But before that, I guess you need to understand the symptoms as well. So, what are 5 strategies that we can use to manage ourselves, Dr. Prem?
Okay. If I may, Hetal, I did mention earlier that suddenly there's an influx of studies that have been published. Um, there was one study in particular, an Australian one, that was quite interesting. And it was basically from there where we actually got information on the impact for quarantine. But there was another one, there was an English study that was published in the Lancet middle of last month. Towards the end of last month. And it basically did retrospective collection of analysis and they looked at the times when people had symptoms during the SARS outbreak as well as Ebola outbreak. And they found that during the SARS outbreak, children were 4 times more likely to have post-traumatic stress scores, higher post-traumatic stress scores than adults. And that a predictor of developing post-traumatic stress symptoms 3 years after that period, all right, was half. They found that one third to half people warranted a diagnosis of trauma-related psychiatric problems. So those numbers are quite high, and especially after they realized that a history of previous psychiatric illness was associated with anxiety and anger 4 to 6 months after that period, after the period that under which they were either in quarantine or they were under extreme amounts of stress. And this study also found that healthcare workers, especially, right? Quarantined healthcare workers needed more support. This article they felt that quarantine should be restricted. It should be restricted because people handle mandatory quarantine better than voluntary quarantine, because in voluntary quarantine they keep asking themselves, why am I doing this? What is the big picture here? But in mandatory quarantine, you've got no choice. That's basically what we are experiencing. Everyone just says, this has been decided for us. So what are the stressors that had led to the development of mental issues? Firstly was a longer quarantine period. Secondly was increased fears of infection, of getting infected. Thirdly, frustration. Fourthly, boredom. Fifth was a fear of inadequate supplies. And these are during the quarantine period. Now, the stressors that arose post-quarantine period were that of inadequate information, about the illness, about the virus from the authorities. Secondly, financial losses that could not be recovered. And thirdly, especially in the case of Ebola virus, the stigma. We felt that people were keeping them far away because of all the negative news that surrounded Ebola virus. I remember it was, I think the Ebola outbreak came out in 2002, 2003, 2002, I think. And it was very soon after the Nipah virus outbreak had occurred. And I was in my neurology posting at that time, and I was quite freaked out by it. And then we hear about the Ebola, and I think I was really scared because it was something so fulminant, before they realized how to go about treating it. So,
Mm.
and that was coming from me, a doctor. So I can imagine someone who doesn't know
Yeah.
very much about it, if they are not given the actual um, modes of transmission, I think anyone would be really scared.
Mm. Right. Can I just clarify a couple of things? So you're saying that the study that was done in Britain showed that from all the assessment done during the SARS and the outbreak of Ebola, it showed that children were 4 times more likely to have PTSD than
Not
adults.
PTSD. They scored higher,
Post-traumatic
4 times higher on post-traumatic
stress
stress
scores.
scores. Yeah,
Right. Okay. So, wow.
yeah.
Wow, I'm just thinking about my nephew and niece, and they seem to be doing absolutely fine. They seem to be doing better than the adults.
That's
Um,
that's what we see too. But remember, children are not going to come and say, "I think I'm stressed." So that they, even if they are stressed, or if the stress from one of the parents or both parents is rubbing off onto them, you know how children, the things children present with headaches, tummy upsets, acting out. So
okay.
we also have to remember that
Mm,
children can get stressed too. So we have to keep that
of
in mind
course,
and
of course, of
regulate
course.
our behavior when they are around. Of course, I mean, don't paint an unrealistic picture. Let them know that this is what's happening, but it's under control.
Hmm. And also to double check on a couple of things in case I've heard it wrongly. Did you say a third to a half warranted psychological support 6 months
No,
post the crisis?
they warranted a third to a half of those people whom they studied warranted a psychiatric diagnosis, a
All
trauma,
right.
a trauma-related disorder diagnosis. So, in trauma-related disorders, you have acute stress reactions, right? You can have
Mhm.
adjustment disorders, right?
Okay.
And you
Yeah.
can have traumatic stress disorder. The criteria for all of them
Mhm.
vary, but what most commonly does not need any treatment are acute stress reactions. They occur
Mm.
due to an exposure to an extreme event, usually disasters, you know,
Mm.
floods,
Mm.
tsunami, fires.
Mm.
But they overcome this quite fast, sometimes within a few hours, sometimes within
Right.
3 to 4 days.
Okay. All right. And you're also saying that quarantine healthcare workers require more support. And
Yeah.
I missed the last one. Quarantine should not be in excessive amounts. And you were saying that mandatory quarantine was better than voluntary mandatory
Yeah.
quarantine.
This wasn't exactly from this article. It was something else that someone had written, a sort of
Mm.
anecdote, and
Mm.
they felt that they had been through both. And
Mm.
I'm not too sure about the circumstances. I believe it was in Canada,
Mm.
um, where some who were not so much at risk,
Mm.
who lived a bit further off, they were advised to undergo voluntary quarantine. But there
Mm.
were some other people, they had to quarantine them, as in like Hong Kong, right? And
Mm.
they found that those who are told that you have to be quarantined, yes, they do have um, reactions to the
Mm.
announcement, but they handled it better because they know that this is an order.
I
Where
see.
else, someone who voluntarily quarantines themselves, and more especially if they see that other people are not abiding, they tend
Mm.
to question the whole reason. Why am I
Mm.
doing this?
Right. Okay. And during the quarantine, what are some stressors? This includes longer quarantine period. The second one is increased fears of infections,
Then,
increased boredom and loneliness. Did you say that?
boredom, frustration, and
Yeah.
worries about inadequate supplies.
Okay. And post quarantine, it's
Essential.
inadequate information from authority, financial, or trying to recover from financial losses.
Yes, that is post-quarantine,
Right.
inadequate information available as to
Mm,
how to continue being safe. So these are
mm,
important things that need to be outlined, because those of us in the health sector, we know this,
mm,
but we also tend to forget that the layman is going to think that, oh,
mm,
in our case, MCO is lifted, life goes back to normal. No, they have to know that the
mm.
risk is still there. It's going to take time
Yeah.
before
Right.
say, herd immunity develops, or before a vaccine is found. You still have to be a bit careful. This is something that we have to get used to for a while, but
Right.
we are given the opportunity to go and earn a livelihood again. But
Mm,
um, but it may be taken away from us if we are irresponsible.
mm. Right. Of course. And I think that's how you ended the last time, that it's very
Yeah.
important to be a responsible citizen. And the last thing that you said is the stigma from those who have tested positive. What are 5 strategies to manage ourselves, Dr. Brin?
Okay. I was looking through this actually. There are actually 7, but I find that there was some overlap.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
need to, because
Mm,
I mean, I can't take more than 3 to 5 take-home messages. So, you know, sort of doing it more for myself.
mm,
All right. The first thing would be very important to establish a routine. Have a structure in your daily
mm,
life. This will combat frustration and boredom, right? So it can be like starting a project, um, doing something that you've never really thought you'll have the time to do. I ended up doing a lot of things just to distract myself, because I still had to go to work, especially if I got called.
mm,
And it was only for 2 hours, maximum 3 hours a day, and at staggered times. So the rest of the day, as compared to other days when I'm out most of the time, I was wondering what to do. So I ended up tinkering with
yeah.
paint and touching up, and I started looking through papers that I had written before, try to complete them, just doing
Mm,
stuff, and sort of, but having a plan, like, I knew that it was going to be a month, right from the beginning. So I started spacing my activities, made sure I did quite a bit of exercise, and
mm,
basically, I even started catching up on watching TV. I never do watch TV, but I just said, you can do things like that.
yeah.
Then second thing would be is to just keep active, right?
Mm,
But when keeping active, don't overdo it. You have to know
mm,
your red flags. You have to
mm,
know your limits,
mm,
right? And manage your expectations. I
mm,
want to do this. I have to complete this by this week. Yes, maybe we do put goals in our everyday life, but this is a different situation. We may actually uh, start feeling a bit down after a few days. It's actually hitting you. So don't be
mm,
too, you know, uh,
yeah.
pick up pick up new skills, something
Mm,
that you can do online, or something that you've always wanted to do.
mm,
You know, I had friends doing 500-piece puzzles, right?
mm,
Some, those affix models.
yeah.
Yeah, so many. I saw on Facebook that quite a few had actually started embarking on that after like 40 plus
Amazing.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Then the third thing is to communicate. I think
Mm,
that's really important.
mm,
Um, right from the third day, I think
mm,
I installed Zoom, House Party. I was already doing online teaching with Hangouts Meet. And,
yeah.
and that's when I realized that even WhatsApp, you can take 4 videos at once. So you can have, now I heard it's been increased to 8.
Oh,
And we've
really?
been Yeah, and that's what I heard this morning. I'm not sure whether it's haven't verified it. Um, I think that was important, because these are people we probably would have seen twice a week, once a week,
Mm,
So
mm,
where I was talking about schedule earlier, we do have a schedule. I go on with my
yeah.
cousins on Sundays. There's some 8, 10 of us just chatting. Certain other days, friends whom we used to meet for squash or
Mm,
tennis, we
mm,
we can't do that now, so we can do it
right.
online. So
Right.
staying connected is very, very important because
Mm,
you have to maintain that. We are lucky at this time. We at least have digital connectivity. You can
yeah.
imagine how it would have been 25 years ago, 20 years ago.
So, yeah.
Right? Now, while staying connected, you still have to remember that we are here to help each other up, all right? Or, if you are feeling down, someone would actually just watch out for you. So try to exercise compassion to yourself as well as to
Mm,
others,
mm.
all right? So model peaceful behavior.
Wow, I love
Um,
that.
yeah, no, I think that's quite important.
Mm,
Of course, I mean, if you are with this group of friends who are always used to, taking a jab at each other. I mean, we are still continuing that with certain groups, but basically to let people know that, oh, we are thinking about you, and we
mm,
just want to know if you're okay, and let's have a chat.
mm. Right. Okay.
And it can even extend to people you would have met, say at a pub on a Friday night. Have a Friday night session. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
The
The
other
next.
day, the other day, I was just hanging out with my helper, and I just
Yeah.
told her, "Have a drink with me." Like we
Yeah.
have been friends, I guess, for so long, but I guess boundaries and stuff like that. So when I asked her, I said, "What do you miss the most?" And she said, "I miss going to backyard. I used to go backyard once a week, but I'm here, so I can't go anywhere." MCO.
Yeah.
So both of us just sat down, had a drink together and had a blast. It was awesome. It was just amazing. Yeah, and the next morning was a little awkward, but that's completely fine.
Yeah. This is basically we are easing ourselves into this possibly new way of life for a short while more to come.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of companies have actually been very proactive, and they've started planning strategies and thinking how they can do more things online. We've started it in
Mm,
the university where I teach, and I'm sure a lot of other people have been doing it for a long time. It's
yes,
just that,
absolutely.
doctors are clinically based, so we see a patient, and now even in my hospital, we're actually thinking of maybe going on Zoom and seeing patients who are stable so that we can tell those who are a bit older, don't risk it and come to the hospital. We'll send you a
Mm,
prescription.
right. Fantastic. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what are the, speaking about, clients and client meetings, what are the different types of treatments available if, like you said, we are beginning to show signs and symptoms on a day-to-day basis for over 2 weeks? What are some treatments that are available for us?
Before I get to that, Hital, maybe I'll just finish off the other 2 points. I had
Oh,
5 points.
sorry.
No, no,
Yeah,
that's okay. That's
I actually wrote
right.
down 6 points already. There were so many
No,
good points in there. Oh, go
I,
ahead.
I'll,
Sorry.
I'll go through them. I'll go through the headers in a while. No, it's just that I started derailing. My fault. My apologies.
Not at all. Not at all.
Sorry, it is only one more point actually, and that is
Oh,
to
go ahead.
remind yourself why you are doing this, why you're staying home, why you're being responsible. We are doing it to flatten the curve, all right?
Mm,
But we also have to be realistic about our limits, as mentioned earlier, right? Whilst maintaining the big picture, we can still focus on things that are still within our control, such as our thoughts and our
mm,
behavior.
mm,
Regulate them, all right? Avoid herd behavior and influence. All right? Don't don't listen to everything you read in the news. Right? News quantity is not equal to, is not proportional. It's not proportional to the size of the threat. I did say earlier, the virus is not going to come looking for you at home, but it can follow someone who is not being very careful, and they can bring it home. So you have to know these things, right? Use reputable sources to get your information, and try to spend less time on the net. That would be one of your structured approaches. Unless you just heard, oh, okay, there's going to be an announcement on MCO, okay, then you go on the net. Other than that, if you put yourself 45 minutes in the morning, 45 minutes at night, don't go in unless you're using the net for whatever work that you're doing. So just to
Right.
recap, the 5 points would be: establish a routine, number one. Number two,
Right.
keep active, right? Number three, communicate digitally. Number four, stay informed, right? But don't get overwhelmed. Don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed. Stay informed. And the fifth is, remind yourself why you are doing this. You know, this concept about why we are doing this, I feel we need to spread it further. Certain countries, they are not thinking about we as in how we are thinking about we. They are thinking about I. And they are complaining,
Yeah.
why do we have to be in isolation? You know,
Yeah.
it's about us, you know. Yes, we know everyone's going through hardship, but the thing is, without going through this period of hardship, I do agree that we are all in the same storm. Okay, a friend of my cousin came up with this beautiful piece of poetry, and basically he said that yes, we are all in the same storm. We may not all be in the same boat, because that's being presumptuous. Some people are probably having a much
Yes.
harder time than us, right? But we're all in the same storm, and the only way we're gonna get out of it is together, is if we all cooperate. It is going to be difficult, more difficult for some, but we have to adapt and get through this.
I love that. We are all in the same storm, but we may not all be in the same boat.
I can't take credit for it. It's someone we know fairly well, and I think he coined it very, very eloquently.
Yeah, I love that. It's very sticky. Thank you for that. What are the different types of treatments available?
Okay, not everyone will need medication. Let's get that straight from the beginning. Some people just need support, right? Now, some people could get that support by going online. I stumbled upon something the other day. I should have actually kept the link. It was a free site for cognitive behavior therapy that you can practice on yourself. They teach you the basics of cognitive behavior therapy. That would be for someone who's probably having extreme fears or feeling very anxious, but still able to keep it all together, still able to cook, you know, that sort of thing. But for people who really feel they need to talk to someone, the Befrienders is there. We have heard that domestic violence is on the rise. The Women's Crisis Center has a hotline also. So, you know, these would be people who can just give you sort of psychological first aid, all right? Then there is counseling, all right, which you can get from mental health professionals. And once again, I have to say that, you know, it doesn't mean that if you see a mental health professional, you are going to be put on treatment. It's not that. Sometimes what is needed to be done, especially if you're in a state of crisis, is something we call crisis intervention. And what is done there is you basically help them establish coping skills, right support, right? Restore their ability to function, their earlier level of functioning. And basically that is one of the ways you can get support. Now, there are other methods. If you see a psychologist, I don't do any form of psychotherapy because a lot of the time that would be spent on that, I spend on my neuropsychiatric work. So, but I do, I hired a psychologist for that. But anyone can reach out to a psychologist, or if they feel they want to see a psychiatrist. You don't be scared to go out because you are allowed to go out for medical treatment. And I think, as in my center and a lot of other centers, they are providing letters saying that, so and so has an appointment and they need to come. Of course, it's provided they are comfortable to leave the house. But this is mainly for those who may have already had an episode of a psychological problem before, or that their symptoms are cause for concern. But for most people, just going through the strategies that I mentioned earlier, it should be able to help them. And medication, pharmacological medication will be only reserved for those whom we feel need the medication. And finally, the role of the community. Hopefully from these two sessions, the people who have been listening would be able to identify if someone is a little bit more stressed than what is warranted being in this situation, and they could probably advise them or point them in the right direction as to where to go and get help. Sometimes all that is needed is just someone to listen to you.
But mainly, absolutely.
Hopefully we will be able to identify those who are in despair easier now and be able to extend a helping hand.
Well, I think the word is hopefully, but I'm not convinced that have had on the ground at a community level. I don't think we have had enough of a formal education around it, so that individuals are confident enough to be able to apply these skills in that moment. I think you've said it so well. There is community support. And make sure that you go to the right people. You don't want to be talking to your friends who are giving you all kinds of weird advice as well, and maybe pushing you in the wrong direction. So good and positive community support, online resources, support groups, counseling, medical treatment. And for those who are worried about money, there are many who are willing to support, many who are already supporting pro bono, and many who will be willing to support you pro bono, because everybody cares. So if you're watching this and you're struggling and you're wondering where to go, we will leave a post out with all the contact details that we are aware of. There might be many others. And in any case, you can always approach any one of us and we can direct you to somebody that we know. If you're having any financial difficulties, let that not come in your way. Okay, let that please not come in your way. I'm sure a lot of us as professionals definitely going to do our part as well. Dr. Prem, I have a personal question, specifically for myself, but I think also was a question that was asked by a mental health professional in the past session. Energetically, at least, I believe, energetically, we catch a lot of the symptoms that other people have when we meet them, like a flu. It's like a flu. And whether there is enough science to validate it, I don't care, because I know that The moment I'm around somebody who is suffering, I do feel traces of it after that. And I don't need proof. I don't need a journal to tell me that it exists or it doesn't. I do feel it. I'm sure you do too, especially if I remember the last time that we were talking, you said that you had two patients who were in a very critical situation. What do you do to clean yourself energetically so that you don't? So what do you do to protect yourself, number one, and what do you do to clean yourself? Because in our industry, the rate of mental health related issues and potentially suicide is also very high.
Yeah.
So what would you
Okay.
advise us? Yeah.
Yeah, Hetal, very interesting thing you brought up, because we've had a colleague, a very famous psychiatrist, who has been pushing for a peer group network.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us never really took it very seriously. We were like, why is he pushing for this? I suppose he realized that we are absorbing and are getting more stressed than we sort of know. Let me give you an example. You're in a car and there's a rattle, right? And you're driving 300 kilometers. You don't realize, but that contributes to driver fatigue. Similarly, with us who are seeing the same things in and out, people with problems, sometimes in a very negative way. We do get stressed, but we don't realize it. And I would say, if to other mental health care workers who may be listening to this, it is times like this when I really wish that we had supported this friend of ours to form a peer group support network. And what that means is it'll be different. There has to be a different one for psychologists, different one for psychiatrists, different one for counselors, because what may be deemed irrelevant to one particular field may be the actual thing that drives the highest amounts of stress in the other field.
Correct. Yeah. 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 I remember as a psych when I was working in a consulting firm prior to setting up mine, that we had someone called the chief practice officer who was also a psychologist. And that was so valuable because every time we finished a session or every time we done facilitation work, we'll come back and he would clean us up, or what we call debriefing. But having set up my own, there are three sources that I have found extremely valuable, but not related to professional mental health techniques. These are all very alternative techniques. But I've had to, and I've gained so much of value in doing it, because where I used to feel completely, I used to feel so tired, I would pass out in the car for a little while before coming home. Now I feel I have enough momentum to keep going throughout the day. And I also know how to protect my energy as I'm supporting somebody else's healing. So I think it's really, really quite important. I think the idea of a peer group network is super critical as well. Yeah. Just hopefully we are not too fatigued to continue to listen to each other. Well, we are at we've exceeded ourselves again.
Again, yeah.
We tried to keep it short, but I think I just think that it's super interesting. I think super valuable. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you might want to add before we leave?
I think that's basically it. I think I've spoken a bit too much anyway.
No, you've spoken in detail as to what was required. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me, Hetal. I hope this was up to your expectations or what you thought it would turn out to be.
I think I'm just so super grateful that we are having this conversation even to begin with. That's number one. Number two, this experience of being able to share from a mental health perspective, I don't think we've ever really done that before. So that's amazing. And number three, I have no expectations and you have definitely exceeded it.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah,
enjoyed it very much too.
yeah, and it's just wonderful to have a psychiatrist um, who is so personable, who is so personable.
I've got
And
names of many other psychiatrists whom you can call and fill up your session if you like.
no, I think a lot of people may have heard of psychiatrists, but may never have seen one, and may have always had a perception that it's a very clinical process. And to know that it's personable and it know that it's warm, I think as anyone who is suffering, your doctor has a healing power above and beyond the medication. And so to be able to see someone like you, I think if anyone's watching and they're able to see that, oh, that's a person I would love to meet. And I'm sure with or without the medication, I'll feel much better already.
Oh,
And I think it's something that most people may not have access to. They might just not know who is a psychiatrist, what do they look like? Do they come in like this really weird thing where they're just going to diagnose you and judge you? But you look like a normal, regular, and loving human being. So that's really helpful.
I hope so.
Well, that's the best that we can do, right? I think that's our aim is just to support the community, and that's the best that we can do. So with
I'm just
that,
happy that we are able to pass this message a bit further because um, I think a lot can be learned from this, and hopefully people benefit from it.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hita.
God bless. Yeah, and congratulations. I think for whoever doesn't know, I mean, I think I might be crossing boundaries by saying this, but Dr. Prem was working on a book for the past 12 years. And he may have finally given birth to it during COVID-19. So congratulations.
Well, the bread in the oven, it was time for the bread in the oven to come out.
Yeah. So
Right.
crisis and opportunities, right?
Yeah, it actually, I mean, just try to make the best of it and finally found the time.
Well,
Okay,
congratulations.
thank you.
You're
You
a
take care.
proud dad. You will soon be a proud dad of this book. Of this book, yeah, not another child. All right. With that, thank you so much. My name is Hetal Doshi, and together with me is Dr. Prem Kumar, who's a neuropsychiatrist. Really grateful to have you here. We will post up a summary. I've been told that our summary is valuable, so we'll try to put up a summary as soon as possible, so it's easier for you to catch up with what we've spoken about as well. Take care, be well, and mind. And as what Dr. Prem has said, which I love very beautifully, or he got it from someone, we are all in the same storm. Be cognizant that we may not all be on the same boat. And the other thing that I love the most about what you said is role model peace. Yeah, so
Sorry?
role model peace.
Yes, peaceful
Yeah,
behavior.
right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Take
Bye.
care. Have a lovely evening. Bye bye.
Same to you.